So just noticing the richness of receiving each other. Just notice even what happens in the heart. Notice the connection. Notice the recognition, the being touched, the being moved, the being enlivened. That sense of connection, that sense of joining in the one heart. In a way, recognizing the love. Love is the substance, the glue that holds us all together as a unified field. That what we're made of is love. What we are is one heart, one field that is the heart. And that even when our seeming personal hearts feel individual and divided, that we have this access to what connects us. Love connects us. The one field of presence connects us. And so then the invitation is just to rest here together. Rest in our joining. That as we join, we join in the field of presence where we are one. And that even when it seems like the mind doesn't know, the heart does know. Because the heart is intelligence. We're so used to looking for things in the external, and we're not used to finding in the internal. Right? We're used to looking in the external and trying to find in the external. Of course, we all have a certain capacity of looking within, of dropping into the presence, of entering into the heart's knowing. But to truly trust the heart's knowing, like a depth of trust where that knowing is beyond an intellectual knowing, is beyond anything that we can make sense of, and is truly a knowing of the being, knowing itself. And so just to recognize right now in this moment, as we join together in the stillness, in the silence, in the presence, that where we join is the field of rest. That the joining in the field of presence is true rest. It is a resting where we lay down our efforting and our striving. We lay down our trying. We lay it all down at the feet of this moment, at the feet of life, at the altar of now. We just lay it all down. And we recognize that just through bringing the words forward is like an invitation to the divine. It is like it's like a prayer. It's bringing awareness, awakeness, and attention to what is alive in the heart. And then in the resting, in the joining, we enter into the field that is the unified field. It is the heart, it is the knowing, it is the deep natural intuition. In a way, what the heart is longing for is to rest so deeply in this knowing that all efforting, all striving disappears, and a depth of resting that just lets go into the knowing of this moment where there's no one that wants to know, no one that thinks they don't know, no one that thinks that they have found it or lost it, that one disappears into the stillness, into the silence, and the knowing takes on a whole different frequency, in the frequency of rest, in the frequency of heart, in the frequency of love. And just to notice what is happening in your system now. How is life responding to the words that you brought forward? Do you feel seen? Do you feel heard by the intelligence of your own heart? Can you relax even more deeply into yourself? The curious thing is that the heart's longing is to be more deeply in the heart, to be more deeply connected to the intuitive knowing of the heart. And in a way, that longing is to know the oneself, to know yourself, to know the true essence nature without question. And so in this moment, just to notice in the resting, in the presence, in the deep relaxation, the stillness, the silence, and the simplicity of being, a kind of melting that happens when you are just here, just as you are, not trying to rest, not trying to be, not trying to understand, and actually just being here. There's a naturalness and an openness in the silence, in the stillness, in the resting. It's as if the borders and the boundaries dissolve, and you can naturally feel and sense the infinite unboundedness of your being. There's nothing to know or understand or get because it's already here. And that which is already knows it in a way that the mind will never understand, will never know. But that which knows already knows. And in a way, it's as we drop deeper in and down into the silence, into the field of presence, that we access what is already known in the heart. We access an intimacy with our very own heart. We access the field of presence, of love, of transmission. And when we access this field, it is a unified field. It is deeply peaceful and unmoving in the still, silent presence, and yet it is wildly dynamic in its flow of knowing itself. And so, as the words are coming here, there's nothing to hold on to or understand. It's just to feel that dynamic flow of the intelligence that already knows itself, flowing within itself to know itself and to meet itself. And it brings a frequency of direct experience, of an intimacy with yourself that stops looking in any direction, because here now you are. And then the resting, it's not a doing, it's not an effort. There's nothing to resist. It's just falling into yourself, falling into this moment. It can include resistance. It can include the questioning. It can include anything that is here in the field. And it is actually in the inclusivity that the resting can happen more deeply. Everything is allowed. Everything is welcome. Just to be here. Nothing to know, nothing to understand. Just to be here and to rest. The resting here now is where we can absorb and be infused with light, with love, which is the frequency of openness and inclusivity. All questions fall away because you are the living answer. Whether heart longs to know or understand or to deepen in its intuitive recognition, it's really always just about resting. Resting and allowing the whole flow of the feeling, sensing field to just be here as it is. To just be here as it is. So just to feel the sense of presence, of being here. In your way, directly. There is a knowing here, a recognition. You can feel yourself here now. And as you feel yourself here now, just to be awake and aware of what is moving and changing in the field, to see the thoughts that come and go, to be aware and awake to the body and body sensations, to be aware and awake to sense perception, and just to notice that you are the awareness that is awake and aware. You're unmoving, unchanging, and you're awake and aware to the moving, changing landscape. And as you are awake and aware, you are welcoming and including what is moving and changing. There's nothing in you that's trying to resist or defend or push away. There's just a total open receptivity and an awake, aware receptivity. So just to be with yourself here. Can you drop deeper into yourself? Where do you drop into? Take a look around with your own consciousness and just feel, what is that mechanism of dropping deeper? What is that mechanism of being here? What are you accessing to just be here? Nothing needs to change. You don't need to stop the mind. You just be aware of the mind. Just to be here. So when we speak about claiming your identity in God and glory, claiming your identity in presence, in love, in the light, it's to recognize that as we drop into the field, it's a unified field and it's a shared field. That the love that joins us joins all things here. The frequency of the one joins us all here. Mm. Mm. And here we open to receive the fullness of ourself. One of the ways that we can be with this process is that we're looking for something. We're looking for something. We're looking for an experience, an outcome. We could even say we're looking for realization. We're looking for something to happen. But in a way, what we are looking for to happen is already here. And it's about receiving this presence, not overlaying it with an idea of what it needs to be. That you already are the fullness of yourself. Your identity in God and glory, in love, in light, in peace. Your identity as pure awareness is already in place. And it's about the relaxation of the identity, we could say of the me, the identity in protection, the identity in ideas, being seen through as a false identity, so that the true identity in the oneself can live as revelation in the heart, as the one heart. And this is where the magic is. The magic is in the revelation of the heart. The magic is in the awe and wonder of just being here now. Ever present, ever fresh. Because what we are speaking of is not an experience that is held in time. So it's not even something that you can get and you can lose, right? Because it's here now. It's always here now. And that's the magic. That's the awe and the wonder. The wideness of the heart, the intimacy of the intuitive knowing of the heart is where the magic is. We can be moving through life and something can happen that feels like serendipity or synchronicity or magic. right? And we say, wow, wow, what was that? And yet the truth is that that magic is always here. It's just that we can be so preoccupied with the thinking and the protection and these ways of being that we miss this presence of awe and wonder, of living in the wow, living in the magic, living in the spontaneous, the freshness of the ever-present now. So what are you noticing as we are resting here together? So when we speak about knowing who I am, knowing my true nature, knowing my identity, in truth, it's already here. And in the resting, we discover that the sense of presence, of being, is the true nature. It is the nature of God and glory. It's the one nature. And it's not about grasping it or holding on to it. It's about resting in the depth where we recognize, where there's a depth of awe that just says, yes, this. And that we don't need to hold on to it. It can go nowhere. The only thing that moves is the mind, the consciousness of the mind. The presence, the love, the glory goes nowhere. It's always here. The heart field of intelligence is always here. And so access to the heart, to the intelligence is always here. The access to the intuitive heart is always here. And that sense of, well, how do I move from here instead of moving from protection, moving from habit? How do I move from here? And in a way, it's to notice that the heart does know. The heart does know. And yet what tends to happen is that there is like a layer of thought that we kind of cloud over the heart's knowing, because we've learned in the young life that it's not safe to necessarily follow your intuition. So we learn to move within a needs-met structure where we're always looking outside for a kind of approval or validation, or am I doing it right, or am I going to survive in this moment? So we get used to a protective way of not trusting our own intuitive heart and moving from that, because in the young life we were asked to fall into a system in order to get our needs met. So we can, even after so many years, we can still have unconscious holding patterns that keep us in allegiance and keep us in a kind of fear almost of moving just from the truth of the heart, right? But if you're by yourself in the house, right? You're completely by yourself. No one's there, no one can see you. Like you know yourself in a different way than maybe you show to the world, even to the beings close to you. You know your quirks, your foibles. You have a kind of freedom within you. And it's about accessing that intuitive freedom, that quirky, childlike, playful part of you that does know who you are, does know what you love, does know how to have fun and be joyful, and yet learned that somehow that your joyful, fun, free, intuitive self wasn't somehow acceptable. And it's about giving yourself full permission to accept yourself as a joyous, fun, delightful, magical being that is connected to your heart's knowing. And in a way, you know, when we feel like there's confusion in the field, like I have to make a decision or I don't know which direction to go in, how do I access the heart and really move from there? And what we might say is, well, how would you move if you thought there were no consequences and you didn't have to explain yourself or answer to anyone? How would you move? What would you do right now? How would you move right now if you didn't have to engage, communicate, explain? There were no consequences, nothing at all. Let's say, let's add to that, there were no limitations. There's no financial limitations. There's no fear of losing love. There's no fear of upsetting anyone. There's no fear of disconnection or conflict, right? If we take out all the variables that kind of act as a cloudy weather pattern, we realize, well, I do actually know, but I don't even almost let myself move from that place of knowing. I don't even let myself recognize that I know because I fear making a mistake. I fear getting it wrong. I fear what are the repercussions? What if I say yes and then I change my mind? What if I say no and then I change my mind? What if, right? But what if we move from what is, as in the isness of the heart, and we trust that if we are aligned with truth and intuitive knowing, that that truth is one field of truth that is true for all beings, and that whatever happens, actually all beings are reliant upon us accessing our intuitive knowing of truth. And that when we are really moving from that truth, we also miraculously, even though we can be kind of fearful about it, we actually, when we access it, we miraculously realize that no one can actually have a defense against my truth because it's not about anybody else. So there's no defense against what's true for me because I'm not hurting you or upsetting you, or I'm not moving with any relation to anyone else but my own heart. So there can't actually be any defense. And often we find all of our fears of how we will be met actually are not present because the frequency of our heart's intuitive knowing creates a field of love and compliance around us. And that's the field of miracles, right? That's the field of, wow, I thought that. Yeah, you thought that. But you're thinking up all of the possibilities that could go wrong or would render you having made a mistake or upsetting someone, right? But actually, when you remove all of your renderings, all of your ideas and projections that are born out of fear and attachment to past experience, where maybe things have gone a little topsy-turvy, because of that frequency in you of moving from the ego patterning and protection and trying to respond. When you actually move from the truth of your heart, you find that life responds to you with ease and grace and this compliance and flow. And it's a kind of magic. And it's not what the thinking mind and its fear anticipated. But when we enter the flow of intuition, we're entering the flow of love and all inclusivity, and everything is flowing as one. It's the unified field. It suits everyone, right? It's like that feeling of, oh, I don't want to cancel because I don't want to let them down. I don't want to let them down. But then you know that feeling of someone calling you and saying, oh, I'm so sorry. I'm not going to be able to make it. You know, it feels really awful and really hard. And you go, oh, no, it's fine. And you think, thank God, I'm really happy. I'm really happy. I didn't really want to do that anyway today, right? And you kind of see both sides of that situation. And you realize that it's never the way that we think it is, that it's such a play, it's such a dream, it's such a cosmic joke, right? So part of that cosmic joke is, what happens if we just truly move from our heart's intuitive knowing? Because to move from the heart's intuitive knowing is actually not moving from the mind, but to move from the heart is to move from the flow of life. It's to move from a flow of truth. It's to move from the love of God, right? Can you start to feel that? Can you start to feel how it's actually about attuning with the flow of life, the unified field, and it works for everyone, right? There's a magic to it. And then we come into this ever deepening recognition, which brings an intimacy with our own heart, an intimacy and an ability to, let's say, fearlessly access what is in our heart, because our protections that say, don't access what's in your heart, because in the young life, it wasn't entirely safe to access what was in the heart. But now, you are listening to you. You are listening to your heart. And you don't have to express that heart in a way of explaining yourself to anyone. That you listening to your heart is about you attuning to a recognition. It's you actually listening to yourself and attuning to the frequency of your true nature, of your essence, of the love that you are, of attuning to your unity with all, your unity with God and glory, right? So can you see how everything that's dancing in our field is now collaborating and coming together in a cohesive coherence, like a divine coherence? That all of the ways that we think there is disparate fragmentation, division, separation, that we have our unique flavors of it. And yet, when we actually start to open and we rest, or we're carried into rest, right? By just letting everything be here. Let all the juggling balls be here. And a resting kind of happens when you just stop feeling like you're responsible for the juggling and you just watch the show and rest. And then we enter this unified field where we start realizing, well, actually, yeah, I do know. I do know myself more deeply than sometimes I think I do. I can open to the joy and the freedom and the awe and the wonder. I can open to revelation right at the edge of my not knowing. And my identity is known here in the heart. And what if I stop telling myself that I've lost it? What if I stop telling myself that I don't know my true nature, and just rest here and trust in the nature that knows itself, and that it's not about my mind knowing it. We could say that the mind naturally will be identified with itself. It's a natural mechanism. But the more that we rest in the knowing of the heart, the protection of the mind needing to know itself as someone naturally starts to relax into the true identity of the heart knowing itself. And when we speak about that being like a relaxation, it truly is. And that's what we speak about in this rest here now, just resting here. To rest here is just to be here with all that you are here. Not try to create a spiritual mood or a meditative state, but actually just to welcome everything. And as you welcome everything, a kind of resting happens. You find that everything that is here belongs. And you don't need to do anything to kind of stick the pieces together, because the frequency of love and openness of heart recognizes that there is only one here, that everything is unified, everything is joined by love, by silence, by awareness, by awakeness, and that the field is flowing freely within itself. So in a way, when we speak of integration, we're speaking about, in truth, like an integration of all of the seeming aspects of life. And we could say that a true integration is really like the embodiment of all that we're opening to, that feels expansive and revelatory. Like, how do we bring that into the body, into the life? How do we live it? And this is such a deep, deep question that we are continuing to open to. How do we embody it all? How do we not make a new identity of it? How do we just allow the light to come into the body? How do we embody this light? And again, there's no technique or nothing to do. It's the intelligence of life that is carrying us. And it's carrying us by, let's say, the embodiment of the light happens as we bring the light to every aspect of the life that feels to be discordant or disparate or fragmented. Every time we discover something that feels to be resistant, discordant, stressed, confused, whatever it is, as we open to the feeling field, the intelligence integrates by bringing the light to the discordance and repatterning the field. And this is how the embodiment happens, is just by being so wildly open to feel whatever is alive, energized, even when it feels charged and has an intensity or a sense of like a lot of energy in the field. Instead of trying to understand it or get away from it, just to truly be so fully present with it, rest with it, hold these seeming parts of yourself and allow the integration and reconciliation to happen. And this too is what brings the sense of the divine and the human and the holy, and the sense of the spiritual and spiritual life and my regular life, like the practical and the seeming spiritual, into one reality, one seamless reality. And life itself is the way that the intelligence is bringing us into alignment, into a greater intimacy. And then if we speak about how compassion is part of this, compassion is this absolute boundless openness to receive the fullness of ourself. To have a self-compassion is to not resist any single fiber, thread, or part of ourself. And in a way, sometimes it can be easier to have compassion for others and harder to have compassion for our own self. And yet, as we have compassion for our own self, our compassion for seeming others also grows in a way that compassion, that exploration of compassion is just noticing where we are aggravated, where we are judging, where we divide, and where we are critical of ourselves and others. And instead of moving in those projections or protections, the compassion holds the feelings that are underneath the criticism, the agitation, the aggravation, and the judgment. The compassion actually holds everything, welcomes everything. And the frequency of boundless compassion is a frequency that is like a frequency of redemptive love. It's a frequency that allows a relaxation and repatterning of the holdings that are in the field. Compassion is also about a certain truth. So we can know very well the sense of compassion that is tender and holding, but there's a quality of compassion that Kali Maa demonstrates that is also fierce. And a fierce compassion is a moving from truth, a moving not from ego patterning, people pleasing, caretaking, trying to avoid conflict, but a fierce compassion is like a rootedness in the truth of our own heart that doesn't sway to please an ego, doesn't sway in the fear of what might arise in the field if I actually express what is true here, right? So part of that compassion for self is also compassion for other, which is about really expressing the truth of the heart from a rooted and honest, radically honest place.